was, how do you view the decentralized nature of talent, particularly in the cryptocurrency world, but more broadly, relative to what was talked about earlier in terms of centralization? And overlapping with that is like a Silicon Valley mindset versus having to be here. So I think people can definitely start decentralized companies. I just think it's harder. And to your point, it's harder to hire here in some ways, but in the companies that I've seen that are really well run, that are decentralized, like a Zapier, right? Or GitLab is entirely decentralized. I'm an investor in GitLab, for example. The challenge is that you have to do a lot of things really early that normally you'd have to wait until the company was 1,000 people to do. You have to be much clearer on goal setting. You need to think about communication much more thoughtfully. You need to think about hiring much more thoughtfully. Like, there's a lot of shifts where actually, if you're doing it very well, I think you end up with way more process than you would at the same scale of people if you were just centralized. Because you need to have process make up for all the issues with communication and collaboration and alignment and all the things that come up normally as you hit a certain size. So I think you can definitely do it. I just think it's a lot harder. And it's that trade-off of what's harder for you, to hire people or to do it. I think crypto in particular started with obviously extremely decentralized roots and a very strong both open source and hacker ethos, which exists less, I think, in most companies. And so I think that's one of the things that enabled it to be decentralized. I think for some, especially layer one teams that I know, it's really starting to backfire now. And so I see a lot of chaos in 2 or 3 organizations where they've rejected both process as well as centralization. And I think it's really biting them in a really bad way right now because they don't have alignment, they don't have process, they don't have management, they don't have all the things that I actually think you need if you're going to be decentralized. And so I think if you choose it, I think you have to embrace it. And I think some people just don't embrace it properly, and some people embrace it very well.
Do you think this also makes you less nimble if you're decentralized and you have all these processes actually set up? Like you cannot kind of adjust as quickly as you would have.
I think it's harder because you also lose some of the side conversations that you normally have more in the social context versus in the official work context. And I think those conversations are incredibly important. And sometimes you change direction, you come up with something because you're just hanging out with somebody that you're working with. So I do think you lose a lot through that. I think camaraderie tends to be harder, and some companies are more or less focused on that as something that's important. But yeah, on an average, and this is a personal statement, I would much rather centralize a team and then once it hits a certain scale, have a centralized pocket somewhere else than be decentralized, but I'm also showing my age perhaps. So, but personally that's what I would do because I just think it's easier.